All right, continuing our series talking about the most interesting teams to Mavs fans in the NBA. This one was a little bit of a surprise to me. The Sacramento Kings came up a couple times when I asked you guys which teams were you most interested in. Matt George from Locked On Kings joining me. And Matt George, will the Mavericks actually beat the Kings at least once this season?
That's the only thing that we have to hold on to from last year. So I'm hoping no, but I do appreciate Mavs fans thinking this Kings team is interesting because they are interesting, because nobody, even in Sacramento, knows what the hell they're going to be or how good they're going to be. They have enough talent, but as in Sacramento, talent has not been the issue over the last 15 years.
Let's start with that talent. Where are we at with DeAaron Fox? Like, is he got the big extension, and it seemed like he was going to be the next guy for Sacramento, but I've heard more about Tyrese Halliburton than I have about DeAaron Fox. Is that just like the new thing, we're interested in him now, or do we think that Halliburton's going to be better than Fox? Like, what is Fox? What do we think he is right now? Where does he stand as far as, is he the next superstar for the Kings, or is he people are just waiting for a guy to be better than him?
I love Tyrese Halliburton, but I don't think Tyrese is going to be on De'Aaron Fox's level. De'Aaron Fox took a massive leap last year, and I know a lot of people just don't watch nightly Kings basketball, because why would you, unless you're unfortunate like myself.
Getting paid for it.
Yeah, unless you're getting paid for it. Right?
Don't undersell it, right?
But De'Aaron is an absolute superstar. Like he showed it last year. He is a superstar. And when he went into takeover mode, I'm talking 30, 40 point performances, won 2 Western Conference Player of the Week awards. During those stretches, the Kings were beating everybody left and right, not just the Mavericks. They were beating everybody. And for some reason, the Kings still had an impressive record against good teams last year. It was playing the bad teams and the 2 9-game losing streaks randomly they went on when De'Aaron wasn't playing so well, that knocked this team down a peg. But De'Aaron is an absolute star. I expect him to be in the running for All-Star. I'm not going to guarantee that he's going to make it All-Star in the Western Conference, because it's so difficult to do in the West with the amount of guards and how talented the Western Conference backcourts are. But De'Aaron should be in the running. He should be in the conversation. And he said it himself at the end of last season that he knows, or he understands now, that in order to be a star in the NBA, on nights that you're not great, you have to be at least good. And he was trying to figure that out last year. This year, I expect him to have it figured out. He shared with us in his media scrum today that he's put on even more weight. He's even stronger. He's almost at 200 pounds, which is where he'd like to be. He's at like 197 or something like that, which is over 30 pounds more than he was at the draft combine. Yeah. So man's put on muscle, and man's beefy now.
Yeah, we kind of forget, or we didn't even notice, De'Aaron Fox, 25 points a game last year, 7 rebounds for him, and he shot the 3 decently well, like 32%. He's getting up there to where it's not a complete liability for him anymore. It's maybe not where you want it to be, but he's at least shown to be decent in that area, and he plays games. Like, he just doesn't miss a ton of games either. It's been pretty cool to see his elevation and to see his improvement. So he is like he is the guy that the Kings are building around. Like, you're comfortable saying that they're building around him.
Well, if you're going to give a guy a max contract, you damn well better be building around and not think that he's a second. I like the thing is, and I did a podcast earlier talking with Sean Coleman from Locked On Grizzlies, and we talked about De'Aaron Fox versus Ja Morant, and who would you rather start with and who's better today? And to me, it's clearly De'Aaron Fox. The difference is that Ja Morant got a stage that Fox hasn't had yet. And to Ja's credit, Ja performed very, very well on that stage. I mean, averaged 30 points for the postseason or something like that, 30 points per game. That's phenomenal. My thing is, and this is a tough argument to make because he hasn't obviously been there yet, but when De'Aaron gets that stage, hopefully it's with the Sacramento Kings, but when he gets that stage, and hopefully it's this year, he's going to shine, and he's going to show everybody. Like, I'm convinced that if De'Aaron Fox was in almost any other market, but put him into like a mega market that's not one of these super teams, put him in like Chicago is the example that I've been using a lot. Everybody's talking about De'Aaron Fox. Everybody knows his name. And in the Eastern Conference, he's a multi-time All-Star by now. Like that, he is that good of a player. And I'm really not just overhyping him because of the Sacramento perspective. He is that good. And I guarantee you all 30 NBA teams would love to have him. And I think he can be a number 1 guy on a really, really good team. I don't know if I'm ready to say championship team yet, but a really, really good deep playoff team. He can be the number 1 guy in my opinion.
What are the expectations for this Kings team? Like, where are we at with them? Are they just going to be bottom dwellers again? It feels like a lot of, at least Mavs fans and people, maybe not Mavs fans because of last season, but just kind of write them off and say, all right, that's going to be another team in the basement, in the bottom. But what are the expectations for this team that actually like has some good talent around now? Like Harrison Barnes still there. We just mentioned DeAaron Fox. He's had an incredible season last season. They re-signed Rashawn Holmes. Buddy Hield's still there, and he's an incredible shooter. You got Tyrese Halliburton. You bring in Davion Mitchell. You got some talent there. What are the expectations for this team from Kings fans and from maybe yourself?
It doesn't surprise me that people write the Kings off because they have to earn the right to not be written off, essentially. But the Kings have made the bar very, very clear, which I appreciate. Last year, we heard all this talk about, we'll see what you have in Marvin Bagley. And is Tyrese Halliburton going to be any good? And you have a young team, develop them. And it's a gap year, and there's not going to be fans, so it's okay if you lose, blah, 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 blah. There's none of that crap this year. And it's been made very clear by both head coach Luke Walton and general manager Monte McNair. It's playoffs or bust for this team. Now, they don't care how they make it, and I don't count the play-in and getting eliminated as making the playoffs. If they go through the play-in route, that's great, but they actually have to make the playoffs. I'm talking a 7-game series, making round one of the legitimate playoffs itself. Play-in isn't good enough. It's playoffs or bust for the Sacramento Kings team, and they have the talent to do it. Now, many argue that had the Kings had the bench that they had the second half of last season for all of last season, they would have been in the play-in game. And the fact that they went on 2 separate 9-game losing streaks and still finished only a couple games out is ridiculous. It shows, one, how vulnerable the West is with a play-in. Now that up top it's untouchable, but with the play-in, God, over half the teams in the NBA freaking well, they already did, but even more of teams in the NBA seem to make the playoffs. The Kings have to find their way.
That's not a thing you should be mad about, by the way.
No, absolutely not. It's great. I love the play-in. I just think the Kings, if they're going to make the play-in, that's not good enough. And trust me if I say, Nick, if the Kings don't make the playoffs, like heads are going to roll. Heads are going to roll. And it starts with
Luke Walton, or is there anybody else?
It starts with Luke Walton. Now, Monte McNair committed to him, but didn't give him any kind of contract extension. He's in year 3 of his original 4-year deal that Vlade signed him to when he was hired. So it's a lot easier to get rid of a guy when he only has 1 year left than when he still has 2 years left, especially in a financial pinch like COVID. So Luke Walton's head will roll. If the Kings are bad, Luke Walton won't last till the trade deadline, which no Kings fan should be rooting for, no matter how much you hate Luke Walton. And then honestly, I wonder how much pressure is on Monte McNair. Now, I think it would be ridiculous for a first-time GM to be fired after really 1.5 off seasons that he's had with this Kings team, and an abbreviated season at that. But the patience of Sacramento is tapped by fans, by ownership. Ownership is under massive fire right now because the majority of these losing seasons are now under this ownership group and not the Maloofs, the previous ownership group. So the patience is tapped here. And the Kings have to make the playoffs. That is the expectation. And Nick, if they don't, it's nothing short of a catastrophic failure. That's where it is. Doesn't matter how many times they've lost in the past. Catastrophic failure if this team doesn't make the playoffs. It's that simple, and it's relieving to be that simple.
You mentioned before, last season was about, do we know what we have in Marvin Bagley? Did we know? Did we see? Do we know what we have in Marvin Bagley? His numbers to me are actually pretty wild. Like 14 points a game every single year, 25 minutes a game every single year, 7 rebounds a game every single year, like just about 1 assist every single year. It's like his numbers have just been the exact same like the entire time in the league. Like maybe those aren't indicative of who he is, but what do we have in Marvin Bagley? And there was all the rumors with I remember you did the episode with his dad and talking about his dad's comments and all that kind of stuff, him wanting out of Sacramento. We know what we have in Marvin Bagley, and what is he?
We do know what we have in Marvin Bagley. We have a injury-prone, high upside big man who has freakish athletic ability and can honestly average a double-double in his sleep if he wants to, but he's entitled. He's surrounded by a bunch of yes men that aren't leading him correctly, in my opinion. Whether it's his family, his camp, it does not matter. And he and his camp, I believe, are doing the only thing that they had left to save face after getting injured again twice last season. And that is blaming the organization that has missed the playoffs for 15 straight years. I mean, the Kings are low-hanging fruit. They're bottom of the barrel. So it's easy to point at them and try and put all the attention on the Kings and how crappy that organization has been instead of, taking ownership for the fact that you can't stay on the basketball court.
Marvin, that may sound familiar for some Mavs fans.
Yeah, Marvin is still an extremely talented player. I still think the Sacramento Kings are his best chance to work his career out, certainly to get another contract. And for the Sacramento Kings, they could desperately use a guy like Marvin Bagley. Their biggest hole right now is at the 4 spot. And I personally wouldn't want the Kings to start Marvin right out of the gate. I'd rather him come off the bench and put up empty stats and prove that he can, 1, stay healthy, and 2, play a lick of defense before he he makes his way into the starting lineup or even a closing lineup. He still has a long way to go in that sense, but I still think he can be a great fit here in Sacramento. But the reality is Marvin Bagley is no longer part of the core. The general manager who drafted him is no longer here. So there's no desperation anymore to make it work out. The Kings already look foolish for taking him over Luka or Trey or whoever you want to say there. And that, I mean, the Bleacher Report redraft didn't even have him in the lottery, which is not surprising at all. He's not reliable. And if you can't be reliable, then you can't be a good player in the NBA.
There you go. Sacramento Kings, some interesting stuff, some interesting players. There seems to be a playoff mandate. That's going to be really interesting to watch. There you go. Listen to Matt George, Locked On Kings, if you want any more info on the Kings and the drama that ensues. Man, there's a move coming, right, with Bagley or Buddy Hield, or there's got to be one coming soon.
Unless the Kings are massively overperforming, and we're talking like 10 games over 500 at the trade deadline, if one of those two guys isn't gone at the trade deadline, I would be shocked. Absolutely shocked.
There you go. That's enough to go and follow Locked On Kings. Go follow him on Twitter as well.